All right, how's everyone doing? It's been a great conference or what? I think it's been fantastic. Once again, thank you to the White October Events Group for putting this together, the logistics and everything. The Conference Planning Committee has tried to do this ourselves, and it just doesn't go quite as well. So we appreciate everything they do. They're wonderful. All right, and with that, let's start. This is a thing we do every conference we have where we get all the committers and PLC members who are present to sit on stage and take audience questions. And if you stop asking questions, I start asking questions, and that's far more boring than anything you could come up with. So I invite you to please start thinking of things that will make Simon go, and maybe things that will make Simon go, no.
CNC Music Factory make me go,
All right. By the way, PLC that I just made a reference to, that stands to the Project Leadership Committee for the Selenium project. Simon made reference to it in his keynote, but I should point out that the members up here are Simon, Jim, and Ashley. So welcome to everyone. I'm going to start with Summit and ask you to each introduce yourselves, give a name, what role you play within the project, and anything interesting you'd like to say.
Hi, I'm Samit. Some of you know me. Simon mentioned me in the keynote in the morning. I used to be the maintainer of the Selenium IDE, and now I'm helping out with the new generation of the IDE, and that's me.
I'm Titus Fortner. I am one of the maintainers of the Ruby bindings, and I also work at Sauce Labs, so I get to answer those questions as well.
I'm Simon Stewart. I'm just this guy, you know.
Don't let him fool you. He's a cool and hoopy fruit. I'm Jim Evans. I work on the project as a whole, part of the project steering committee. I also have built and maintained the IE driver and the .NET language bindings.
I'm Ashley Hunsberger. I just joined the steering committee recently, and I've been helping to organize the conference the last year or so. And I'm now the co-chair, along with Marcus, for the conference. So.
I'm Dave Hunt, an early fan of Selenium, and originally I contributed some to the documentation. More recently, I get involved with the Python bindings and helping David Burns with maintaining those, and also looking after some of our continuous integration.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Fantastic. Actually, I saw one fantastic question that I don't know why it sticks out to me so much, but I feel like it's super, super relevant. And I'm going to throw it to Titus. This is from Twitter. So while you're getting your thinking hats on, I'd like to ask Titus this question. Can you think of a single project sort of in the wild, a company or a software project that is using Selenium for testing the way you think it should be used? Can you think of a project someone could pull down from like GitHub that they could look at and say, this is it, you're awesome?
This is much more of a softball than the last question you asked me at the last conference.
Well, luckily for you, I don't remember it.
That's good. So I'm also one of the maintainers for a project called WATER. Stands for Web Application Testing in Ruby. And I'm a really big fan of Selenium being what Simon's envision was to really low-level interaction with the browser. And WATER is powered by Selenium, and it attempts to be more of a test automation tool instead of just a browser automation tool to help with some of the timing issues and make it easier to switch in and out of frame contexts and more locator options and things like that. So if you are looking for a way to access Selenium without having to write all of your own code, so many people like just reinvent the wheel every time they go to use Selenium. WATER in Ruby is a really good choice, and I could talk about it literally for hours. So if you are interested, yes, they've heard me. So
specific project, implementation, something available on GitHub? Anything?
Gem install WATER.
Oh, but I mean like for usage, like to actually see it anyway. Okay, then let's just go to audience questions then. What do you think? We have 2 microphones running around. Please wait until you get the microphone so that the stenographers have a chance to catch up to you.
You can ask us literally anything. Ideally about the project.
Ideally,
Actually,
but it doesn't have to be.
I have one question that I'm going to veto if it comes up, but other than that, it's free.
So first of all, I would like to thank the committee for this really nice event. We all learned a lot of things. I have 5 questions, but I will go one by one and let others also ask questions. One question, 5. So I'm doing Selenium, working with Selenium since 2006, but I think I hardly know 10% of it. So the first question, the start of this year, I suggested why can't we move away from Google Group to the discuss similar to Appium? Because Google Group itself is not very good product to discuss, clarify, and search the queries. I find it really annoying, and what I've seen last 2 years, Appium community is much more active, much more useful on the discuss. So what's your opinion? Because I posted that thread specifically asking some committee members, nobody replied.
So the question is like, should we live on Google Groups or go somewhere else? The project actually lives and breathes on the IRC channel, the Internet Relay Chat. We are so old school, we use IRC. Now, the problem is we live in a world of sort of fashion-driven development where people go, I need something new and shiny and hot.
Or just functional.
Now, IRC is perfectly functional. It's not, it's a sort of, it's a weapon from an older, more gentle age.
It's more civilized age.
Not as
even.
clumsy
Yeah,
and
it's like the
random as-
lightsaber of communication. So there is a bridge. We're just going to do the whole of Star Trek, Star Wars.
Yes, we'll do the whole Wars thing.
Star Trek. I'm just going to go outside and hang my head in shame. So there is a connector between Slack, which people seem to like inexplicably, and the IRC channel. So there is a sort of new shiny thing for people who like the new and shiny. The Google group doesn't really get a huge amount of traffic these days, and that's fine. But the nice thing with Google group is it goes into email, and I know we all hate, who loves their email? Right, there's like 5 people. Who has email and uses it on a regular basis? Right, everyone. So the way that we managed to, we have this channel of communication for people who are hip and trendy, and then we have a form of communication which is available for everyone who wants to be able to communicate without needing to jump through hoops, install new software, do various bits and pieces. Yes, Google Groups is a product that needs a little bit of tender loving care, but it's functional and it interfaces really well with email. And so what we have is a sort of real-time chat thing and email. So I have no plans of moving away from Google Groups, but I don't know, maybe someone else thinks I'm wrong.
And just since it was brought up, it's a Selenium channel on Freenode for IRC, and if you want a free invite to the Slack channel, it's seleniumhq.herokuapp.org, and you can get a free invite.
You don't have a microphone, and my hearing isn't that good.
The question was, why do we have Slack and IRC? Is that correct? So the reason is, well, the actual answer is we don't. We have IRC, but we have created a bridge between Slack and IRC because so many people tend to use Slack. Every time you type something in the Slack channel, it gets mirrored onto IRC. Every time somebody types something into the IRC channel, it gets mirrored onto the Slack channel. It's exactly the same.
But there are also some additional rooms in Selenium, or in the Slack channel, or in the Slack organization for things like Ruby and JavaScript and Water and things like that. So,
which I never see because I don't use Slack.
I don't need you to see that.
Well, so yeah, it's kind of interesting. Selenium is an open source project, and we're part of the Software Freedom Conservancy. And we're huge fans of open source, right? And the SFC have a requirement that the projects use and be open source, right? If we wanted to turn this into some sort of weird closed source commercial thing, we wouldn't be able to do it. My problem with Slack is, and this is, I use a Mac, so I'm a massive hypocrite. But my problem with Slack is it's so proprietary, and it's like, I just don't like that. And IRC is perfectly functional, it does the job, and it consumes almost no memory. So I can have this thing running quietly in the background. Yeah, there's one old school person in the crowd going, yes!
Any more questions? You've got 4 more, so we can go back.
Do you think any tool which is not using Selenium in backend and still giving tough competition to Selenium?
Is there a tool that is not using Selenium in backend, but it's still giving tough competition to Selenium?
I'm tuning into accents. Jim, do you want to?
I think I understand the question. The question is so let me rephrase it to make sure I've got the question correct. Is there any tool that's out there that competes against Selenium as a browser automation tool that does not use Selenium doesn't wrap Selenium in some way that's a real competitor to Selenium? I think my answer is twofold. The answer is yes. Obviously, there are other browser automation tools that don't use Selenium, and by definition, that makes them a competitor to Selenium. Do I think that makes them better than Selenium? Not necessarily. They may be in some things, they may not be in others. But here's the thing, and you've heard it talked about a lot over the last couple of days, is that WebDriver which the Selenium project is based on, is a worldwide web consortium, a W3c standard, which means that the browser vendors are tasked with creating a tool and maintaining a tool to automate their own browsers. And here's my view on it. I'm an engineer by training, so I look for solutions where I don't have to reinvent the wheel. And if it seems to me that if the maker of the browser, who in theory should know the best how to automate it, are already giving a tool, already providing a tool to manipulate the pages within it, and I have a product that wants to automate a browser, and I'm not using that browser vendor provided tool, it seems to me that that's kind of reinventing the wheel, and not as elegant a solution as it could be.
Can I have a second part of that? Which is, technically, like Jim said, you would have to be making a series of particularly ill-informed choices to not use the WebDriver protocol to control a web browser these days. Like when we started 11 years ago, it was very different, right? And the ecosystem was far wider. There was the original Selenium, there was Windmill, Sahi was out there, Water was a competitor. And over time, I think everything except for maybe Sahi has migrated onto using Selenium as the underpinnings. Because it turns out automating a browser is really difficult, and only someone who was an idiot would go about it. But, sorry. Guilty. The APIs that people use are an interesting thing, right? Those are the bindings that you have in your local language. In the JavaScript world, there's like a million different ways of doing the WebDriver JS. There's the ones we have in the project, WebDriver IO, and other frameworks like that, right? And so there's a lot of innovation that can now happen in the API space. So like Water takes one really interesting thing, which is to present this sort of friendly, comfortable, I'm not really a developer, but I want to be able to use it. Capybara, which is the alternative framework in Ruby, goes the other way and gives you slightly more powerful API. And then, or you can,
we could talk about that later.
A slightly more different API. And so one of the things, and like I said in the keynote, one of the things I really want to do with the project is take it, now that we've got this sort of fundamentals in place, start making sort of friendlier APIs to make it so people feel more comfortable, where, the number of talks for a long time, it was like, how do you write a page object, was what Selenium Conference was all about. And now one of the themes here was, how do I find an element on a page? Like locators seem to be something that people really struggle with, particularly making them stable. And so there's nice innovation that could be done around that. And I think like Sahi has some nice APIs for doing friendly locators. Water has some friendly locators, things like that.
Great. Yeah, I would think that once you have Apple and Microsoft on board, you're probably not going to get them on board to some other standard anytime soon. So, cool. I want to go to Dave Hunt real quick and ask, essentially, how's Firefox these days? How do we sort of clear up some of the friction around Gecko driver? How do you see that going the next couple years?
Okay, yeah. So if you've been running your tests against Firefox, you may have had some issues with the fact that basically we're.
Give you a hug, dude.
Thank you. This is where I want Henrik up on stage as well. Okay. Mozilla has the Gecko driver project, and the Gecko driver is a W3 spec compliance implementation. Which means that even though the spec isn't yet at recommendation level, we've been following the spec and implementing it as stated in the spec. Unfortunately, in the meantime, unfortunately in some senses, I think the timing is unfortunate, but Firefox has moved away from the traditional extensions, which meant that the what we now refer to as the legacy Firefox driver no longer functions in modern versions of Firefox. So this means you may still be running your tests against an old version of Firefox, which isn't ideal. And it may be that if you've tried upgrading and tried switching to Gecko driver, you may have had some issues because we had a situation where there wasn't a parity between what Gecko driver is supporting and the legacy Firefox driver. We're in a much better situation now. We're closing in on the spec compliancy. I think for a long time, actions was an issue. Last time I was up on stage doing one of these, actions was an issue. That should no longer be a case, and if it is, please raise a bug and let us know. I believe proxy support is landing or has landed, so that is also should not be an issue. And some of these are things that you may rely on, but they're relatively few of the users are probably using. So what I would say is, try using the latest version of Gecko driver and try using the latest version of Firefox. If you're going to raise an issue, please do. The issue tracker is Mozilla/Gecko driver on GitHub. Please give us as much information as you can. It also is helpful if you can test on the latest nightly build of Firefox, although that's not necessarily essential for raising the initial issue. But we're getting there. Yeah, so hopefully that won't be a question next time I'm up on stage.
Great. I think it's gotten better every time we've asked it. So.
I will point out that some of the challenges that have been associated with Firefox are not entirely in the Gecko driver realm. Some of them have been in the remote realm where we haven't gotten some of the wire protocol stuff exactly right in talking between the various components and the remote server. We're working really hard on that. Simon in particular is working really hard on that to try to smooth out that as much as possible.
And something that's not necessarily that obvious is the spec as it is, and the initial version of the spec doesn't cover everything that Selenium is able to do. So things like requesting logs, that's not in this version of the spec. It's likely to be in the next version of the spec. So Gecko driver is implementing the spec, therefore you will not be able to get logs from Gecko driver, where you were able to do that previously. And we recognize that's an issue. It will be something we deal with, and hopefully we'll be following the level 2 specification. If we decide to prioritize it for other reasons, we may do it as a vendor prefixed option, so it may be available before then. But yeah, we recognize that is an issue, and it's unfortunate, but we'll get there.
Can I just ask, how many of you are holding off doing the upgrade to Gecko driver and maybe even Selenium 3 because of these issues? Okay. Here's how you can do it safely without blowing up your entire world. First, switch to using the Firefox ESR release, the extended service release. That one is compatible with the old legacy Firefox driver. Second of all, add to your desired capabilities, Marionette false. So set that Marionette flag to false. Then run your tests before you do anything else. Don't upgrade your version of Selenium yet. Don't move to Gecko driver. Don't do anything. Just change to the Firefox ESR release, run your tests, get those stable. Then upgrade to Selenium 3.5, 3.6. 3.5 is the lowest version you should go to. 3.5.3 is the lowest version. 3.7 is going to have some magic in, but 3.5 is the lowest version. Continue running your tests. At this point, the only thing that will have changed, you'll still be using the legacy driver. You'll still have the old version of Firefox. The only thing that will have changed is you've now upgraded your version of Selenium. So you've kept every other variable still. The next stage is to try running a test with Gecko driver. And the way you do that is you get the latest Gecko driver, 0.19 as we speak, and you remove that flagged marionette false from your desired capabilities. Run your tests again. Hopefully it'll work. If it doesn't work, take a look. There's probably some systemic underlying issues. And then you can do the upgrade to the latest version of Firefox, and then you've done that process. But each time, you're changing one single variable.
I don't know if Gecko Driver 019 will support ESR. No.
No, I don't think it will.
Version 55, yeah.
Oops.
Okay, we will find out which version of the Gecko driver works with the ESR release, and then, yeah. And then we'll stick it in the blog post. We'll document this somewhere.
Simon,
because
could
it's
you
documentation, right? We're really good at that.
You should tweet out those steps. Do a multi-threaded tweet of those steps. Cool. More questions from the audience? We got several. Beth, your choice. Yes.
So, hello. You're talking a lot about the specification, and it doesn't include handling authentication.
Yeah.
The basic auth, and how you should go around that if it's not available. And so using authwait, clicking in the middle of the browser script, it's not an ideal way.
Authentication is one of the things we're going to be discussing for level 2 of the spec. The problem is that we just didn't have time to get round to it, and there weren't multiple implementations for us to look at and discuss. Because authentication is more than just a username and a password. Some people might use YubiKeys or OTPs or whatever it is, right? So what seems like a trivial problem, like as you gaze into the abyss, becomes more and more horrific.
I believe Orr did a talk about something related to that. That'll be
Yeah,
video.
yeah. Orr's talk was around testing OTPs and things like that. It was really
But that is not a pop-up authentication which comes from the browser. That's an HTTP level authentication than the basic auth window.
I mean, there was the Firefox driver had the legacy Firefox driver had a sort of basic implementation where you had authenticate as and a credentials interface that you could pass in, with the default implementation being username and password. It was never particularly stable, and it was never particularly good, and it never got adopted anywhere else in the project. So what we're hoping is that level 2, it'll be one of the things that we tackle, that and logging.
You have a method for that, an alert handle authentication window, and it works in Internet Explorer driver.
I didn't catch that, sorry.
Can you repeat?
Have a method? Oh, for a driver. Well, you could use a proxy, right, and set the headers.
Yeah, you can use a proxy.
Yeah, you could use a proxy and set the basic authentication headers.
Not really if you change the user, so it's complicated, but you have a method.
It's just not there at the moment.
Yeah,
it is coming.
It will be.
Just,
okay.
Yeah, we don't have anything right there right now.
I mean, the nice thing is the
no,
spec...
you have. You have in the alert, iAlert interface, you have a handle authentication as a method. Available in the C# bindings.
No, that was always marked as a beta feature in the API. It was never intended to be like production use. Sorry.
Okay.
So one of the things that's really cool about the work that we're doing, the spec is all done using email. It's not a Google group, but it is email. There's a browser tools and testing working group. That's all done by email. We accept pull requests on the spec itself, which is hosted with the W3c GitHub account. So, I mean, this whole thing is open. If there's a feature you really want, then come to that mailing list, discuss the feature you want. It's not like it's a closed door. Come, ask, talk, and maybe we can thrash these things out and discuss it and get that into the spec sooner rather than later. But I think there's a sort of feeling of helplessness with specifications, right? Like, I don't know. What kind of a... Who would work on these things? And it seems inaccessible, but it's all on GitHub.
I think one of the frustrations with the specification process, though, is that it does tend to be a fairly long-term process, or at least our initial stab at a specification was a very long-term process as these things go, and so that may extend some of the frustration. And I totally understand that. That's totally understandable. That we'd like to move a little bit faster this time around.
Yeah, I think we will move faster. Now that we've got the basics in place, everyone's on board, and the infrastructure is all there, then I think this is going to move faster now.
Should be done by Christmas.
Actually, it should be done by Christmas.
2017? 2017?
So, well, go ahead. So,
how familiar, I guess none of you are intimately familiar with the W3c release process for a specification. It is as exciting as it sounds. But you have a working draft, and then you publish the working draft, and you have those. And then eventually we go like, yeah, you know what? I think this is just about, we're nailing down like the final bits and pieces, and you move to what's known as candidate recommendation. And in candidate recommendation, you stop making major edits, you stop adding new functionality, and you add clarifications, and you just clear things up. And we've been candidate recommendation for a long time. The step after that is proposed recommendation, or PR. We should already be in the PR phase, but there was a bit of a snafu where the two editors, David Burns and myself, didn't realize that we needed to have a particular test suite in a particular way. That is now being taken care of, so we should move to PR soon. The PR period is about 6 weeks, I think it is, which means it actually might be done by Christmas.
Of this year.
Of this year. The minute we move to the PR process, they'll see a lot of like happy tweets.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, you'll see even more happy tweets.
Great. One more question over here.
And pictures of steak and goblets of gin.
Goblets of gin, yes.
Hello, over here. I know Selenium is browser automation, but it's always talked about in the context of test automation. So I was wondering if you could think of any innovative uses, or do you think there are any innovative, legitimate uses of Selenium that haven't been explored?
Did you say legitimate?
Yeah, some legitimate underexplored uses of Selenium other than testing.
Someone else want to go first? Anyone?
I've got one.
I mean, I have opinions.
I have opinions, and I've used it for things that were not testing, that were legitimate.
Oh. Well, I won't say it's particularly innovative, but for a while I used to do some small development on a web page, and I had to log in. And I wanted to reach a particular state there so that I could visually explore what was going on. And this had to go through several iterations. So I tend to use the IDE, which I always had running somewhere, to reach through a stage of several steps, and then reach the page that I actually wanted to work on. And I found that to speed up my development on it. So I won't really call it as a particularly innovative use, but it was one of the uses I put this to. So it wasn't for test, but to actually automate some of the boring stuff that I used to do. And I tend to use Selenium a bit for doing some of the checking of websites and stuff that I wanted to do today. Grab some data out of it, sending to my email, which I tend to look at more often than not. But, more often than Simon.
I'm notorious on the project for just not really understanding how to read. Yeah, people say, like, you should check your emails. It's like, So Selenium, if you think about it and squint and turn your head sideways, is a tree navigation language which gives you mechanisms to act on nodes in that tree, using like fancy words. So, and that's why it gets applied to, there's Winium and other things which take the same protocol and the same APIs, and they allow you to do testing of desktop apps. You've got a wealth of mobile testing tools that use the same approach, because it turns out most computers represent their UI as a tree that you can navigate through, and they have mechanisms for doing that navigation, which are what we think of as the locators. So if you want a really innovative use of WebDriver, find a problem that is basically, I want to find a node on a tree and do something with it. That isn't to do with the desktop or mobile or a web browser, and you'll have it. Like, I don't know, if you're going through a decision tree, for example, that might be like absolutely like mind-blowingly complicated, but it would be a really nifty thing to do. Cool. End of message.
All right. Let me pull Ashley into the discussion at this point, right? I wanted to know, you're a test architect at Blackboard. You don't have any direct reports at the moment. I'm curious, how have you been able to promote and evangelize sort of general test education, or Selenium in particular, throughout your organization?
A lot of it really just comes down to building relationships, and my new job is sales, apparently. So I just don't make any commission off of that. So I would not ask people to do things that I myself would not learn to do. I believe very much in servant leadership. And even if I can't implement something technically, I still want to understand the nuts and bolts and how they do that, and then understand why something may or may not be a good decision. And I talked a bit about logic and rhetoric yesterday. So understanding everything that we could possibly do and using that logic, and then using rhetoric to convince people of what we should do moving forward. I haven't met something I couldn't put a process around, not good or bad, but it happens, or want to tweak a process. And so a lot of that comes down to, who do I know? I find an ally. I find somebody that, you know, oh yeah, maybe we should do that, and kick ideas around. And all right, now how do we do that and build people that want to do what we think is good? And it's never, I think we should do this, I think we should do that, and dictate it out. It's always, how can I help you do better? And I ask that every day for every person I work with. What can I do to help you? And I found that that's helped me get things done. There's also a really interesting book called Switch, How to Lead Change When Change is Hard. And it talks about if you have to steer a company in a direction, or a department in a direction you think they should take. It has this great metaphor about guiding an elephant. And an elephant's going to go wherever the hell it wants to go. So how do you motivate that elephant to go where you want it to go? And it's really about finding motivation in people. So all of this change that we institute in my day job as an architect is, how do I motivate people and show them what they're going to get based on this?
I think I heard earlier today that motivation has to do with carrot cake. Right, Petra?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
If you didn't see Petra's talk, it'll be online. She uses carrot cake instead of carrots. It's wonderful. All right, great. Any more from the audience? I know there's a bunch of hands up. So, Beth, you want to? Ruth, if you can queue up the next one.
Hi, I'd like to ask Simon. You mentioned that you wrote the support package while after a few beers, and you're not particularly happy with it. Is there actual problems with it, that why people shouldn't use it as much as they do, or are you just fundamentally opposed to people using software written under influence?
Yeah, I mean, the support package wasn't my finest moment. There are little pockets in it which are nice, and generally it's been me doing some implementation and then Jason Labour coming in and cleaning it up. So wait and WebDriver wait is really nice. The expected conditions class, which we get more pull requests for than anything else, is just this bloated monster. Page Factory is just overly complicated, hard to use, not very flexible. It's a little bit pants. It's a very English way of saying it's rubbish, right? I just realized, like, not everyone here is English.
I read the transcript to see if I heard you right.
But the idea behind the Page Factory of, I'd like to use an annotation to find the element, and I'd like that thing to be done lazily, that's a great idea, right? But the implementation is just awful, and I wouldn't go near it, except I accidentally put it in a package that lots of people use, and now it seems to be like one of those things where people go like, I use it all the time. Are you sure that's a good idea? They go, absolutely. It's like, I wrote it, I promise you it's not. But the idea is good. So yeah, the support package, little pockets of bright light. The white stuff is really good. Surrounded by a sort of sea of, I think I could have done this better with hindsight.
A couple of custom buy implementations, locator implementations that are pretty good. I keep threatening to write that blog post titled Page Factory Considered Harmful. I keep threatening to write that blog post.
Does anyone use Page Factory, by the way? Do you like it? All right, okay, well, maybe I should stop dissing it quite so much.
I will not stop dissing the .NET implementation. It uses classes that are not compatible with .NET Core 2.0, and making changes in the dependencies on, like taking an additional dependency in the .NET bindings is challenging and difficult for reasons. I'm happy to talk about it at length over a beer as to why we hesitate to take new dependencies in the .NET bindings. But so I will not stop dissing in public the .NET implementation of the page factory. If I had it to do all over again, I would not have put it in. The reason it got put in is because there was a lot of hue and cry that Java has it, why doesn't .NET? And so it was shoved in as an example of how you would do something that was done in Java in .NET, and without much thought, and I've stubbornly resisted in the intervening years actually doing anything to make it better.
Are you saying now its end is near, and so
it's been threatening to do this
the
for
final
weeks.
curtain, yes.
The final curtain.
Well, what I'm saying is that I did it my way.
Okay.
Great. We have another one queued up. Who's got the mic? Try again.
Hello?
Yes.
We can hear you.
I was wondering if you could talk about, I was at your keynote when you spoke about the bus factor of Selenium, and you also went through the various component parts of it. And I was wondering if you could go through those again, but talk about if someone wanted to contribute code, what language skills would they need for each piece?
Well, I can talk about the Java bit, and then I think I'll let the Python, .NET, and Ruby people talk about their things. You need to be able to check out code from GitHub, and then you need to be able to fix bugs. And ideally, you write idiomatic code in Java. We use Java 8 now, so it's totally legit to use like the nice functional features and lambdas and things like that. And yeah, it's not terribly complicated code either. Like if you take a look at the Java bindings, there's a lot of it because we do a lot of stuff, and some of it, like the protocol handshake, looks terrifying, and you realize like, oh, you're just going through a map and you're pulling out fields, and then you generate another map. Like it's not complicated stuff, it just looks hard. So yeah, just find something that doesn't work, fix it, send a pull request. There's not many of us, and I don't know how email works. And so I miss pull requests quite often. So come onto the IRC channel, or if you're hip, Slack, and just go like, can you take a look at this pull request? And I do it. And I think maybe Titus can mention what's needed for Ruby.
Well, I mean, it's with all of these languages, it's just a completely independent implementation of the Selenium protocol in that language. So to a certain extent, it's just picking the language that you're excited about learning and working with. And Ruby's a fun one to do that. I'm a big fan of strong dynamic languages. And so, you know, both Python and Ruby, I think, are really easy to dig into pretty quickly. And the code is Yari, who wrote the Ruby bindings originally, put together some really nice, readable code for that I've mostly been mucking up for the last 2 years.
Yeah, for .NET or C#, we wrote those in C#. The skills you need are a lot of the same that you would need for Java. You need to poke and prod me a little bit more to respond to the pull request because I'm really bad about that. There's a part to there is a component to the project that doesn't get a lot of talking about that could use some TLC, and that's the Internet Explorer driver, which is written in C++, which is a bit of a barrier to entry for a lot of people, so they get kind of scared off about that. Pull requests for that are pretty few and far between, but I'm happy to look at them. The biggest skill that I would want people to have is the ability to come and engage with me in a near real-time basis. Like a chat room is a really good way to do it. Don't try to do it over email. Come and talk with me on the IRC channel because we'll probably have to have some back and forth about, you know, everybody has an opinion about it should work this way and it doesn't work this way, and there's usually a reason why. There's usually a reason why the architectural decision was made the way it was, and it's easier for me to talk about those in a near real time scenario.
Well, and also something that I really like is when someone actually throws up code. So like getting a PR, even if it's not polished, even if it's not like entirely polished and put together, it's like, here's kind of what I'm thinking, and then we can talk about that instead of abstracts, because I don't do those as well.
Dave, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so Python, the client is Python 2, 7, and Python 3. I think we test against Python 3, 4, 3.5, and 3.6. So any code that anybody contributes, we need to be able to continue supporting those versions. We have a relatively small unit test suite in the Python client, which run really quickly. I'd like to see that expanding. I'd also be keen to see if we can modernize some of the client and take advantage of some of the features of Python 3, because at the moment, I don't think there's much of that. Yeah, I would echo everything that everybody else has said in terms of how to get involved. But I'd also like to reiterate something from earlier on, and that is, if you're struggling to find somewhere to contribute, the documentation really would be one of the most valuable places where anybody could contribute at this point.
If you are interested in becoming a committer, every single Selenium conf, we run a workshop called Fix a Bug, Become a Committer, and we walk you through checking out the code, doing a build, becoming familiar with the build tools that we use, which is buck and rake in disguise, very heavily disguised.
Crazy fun.
It's called Crazy Fun. It is a lot of fun. I loved it. It was so entertaining.
Is that workshop sold out, Ruth?
So yeah, we check out this code, and then we walk through the architecture, like how do all the pieces fit together, and how do you communicate with the browsers, and how do you control life cycles and stuff like that. Yeah. So there's just so much knowledge in there, and Jim is running that one tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so come along to that if you ever get an opportunity and you're interested.
We're trying to find out if it's sold out. I think it probably already is. We don't know yet.
We're just finding out whether it's sold out. It's
It
not.
is not sold out.
It's not sold out.
Fantastic.
Ooh.
So there's space available. Come along tomorrow. It's a lot of fun. And you get to go what's going on here?
And you get to watch me say, I don't know what's going on here.
Fantastic. We have more questions, I know. This gentleman over here.
Yeah, we've had lots of them today. That's good.
Hi everyone, thank you. And the question, so Selenium WebDriver is basically the nice example of success story. And taking account all the experience and all the challenges that you faced for all this long path, taking a look at a small brother, Appium, how do you feel? Will it become the same standard for mobile? And what are the main challenges that they face or will face?
How do I feel? Like, mobile is obviously like one of those things that has to happen. I think the WebDriver APIs are a nice fit. And the new user interaction stuff, the new actions APIs that come from the W3c spec are perfect for mobile. They are incredibly flexible. They allow you to articulate things like put your finger here and then spin it around in a circle, for example, which you can't do with the original Actions API. So, I mean, that's a huge step forward, and I don't think there's going to be much that is going to be better than that that's around. I think there's a certain amount of momentum behind it as well. So it's not inevitable, and it's not a done deal, but it'll be interesting. The main problem is that, I mean, it took us 2013 or something,
Yeah,
2012. Yeah. So the project has been going, so Selenium has been going for 13 years, and it's only for the last 5 that we've had, or 6 that we've had vendor support. Appium has that, or whatever it is that happens next, has that chasm to cross. And I think mobile operating systems are far more fragmented than the browser ecosystem. Like, everyone had a web browser, and they all implemented the same standards. I mean, really, you've got Android and iOS. And those are 2 very different ways of looking at the world. And I'm not sure there's going to be like one mobile API for that. So what you really need is you need to persuade Apple and Google to implement a good, they don't even need to work together. They just need to have a good, accessible, usable automation story. And that's a heck of a challenge.
Windows Surface, Kindle Fire.
I'm
just kidding.
In the immediate near term, though, one of the biggest challenges I think that Appium is going to face is going to be adapting to the specification protocol changes. That's probably in the immediate term, because the language bindings are already speaking that protocol. And I mean, I'm not involved terribly with the Appium community, but I haven't seen those changes make it into that code base yet. They may be in progress. I'm just not aware of it.
We've lost Marcus.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out where to go
That's
next.
all right. I don't mind.
Wait, I think we have time for one more before we wrap up.
Really?
I mean, whoever.
There's a lot of interest down there.
There is a lot of interest. I mean, we could technically keep going for a while if you want.
He's been waiting for the whole time.
You know, after this, I'm going to hang around for a bit. So
Yeah,
you
me
can
too.
always- we're just sitting here, and you can just come and, I don't know, give us a hug or something.
So thanks, first of all, to the Mozilla team. I know last year, when Firefox 48 came up, we had a really, really hard time, and they were coming so fastly up with the Gecko driver and fixing all the bugs. That was really, really great. And I don't know, I just want to know, what is the timeline for the complete switch? So for example, from the Chrome driver, I haven't heard anything about the W3c protocol. And in the old days where there was no W3c protocol, everything was working fine. I just switched from, let's say, Firefox to a Chrome, and the same test ran. And now I switched from Chrome to Firefox, and I have index out of bound exceptions because the click is now calculated from the upper left edge and not from the center, but the API in Selenium, at least to Java bindings, is the same. So I have to check back which browser in which version I'm communicating before I can set the coordinates, for example, for a click.
That sounds like a bug.
Yeah, no, that part sounds like a bug. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Fix it. Pull request.
So is there a timeline when the JSON wire is retiring?
Well, so I can tell you right now, and it's not really a secret because the code's happening all in the open. I know that that Chrome driver is closing in on a spec compliant implementation. That code, I think there's like one more piece that needs to go in. Actions is not there yet. That's the last sort of big thing that needs to go in before they're ready to turn that on, at least in a beta. It's available now. You can add a capability and use the spec compliant version of Chrome driver now. So that gives you Internet Explorer and Firefox and Chrome right there. The other big two desktop browsers then would be Edge and Safari. And unfortunately, we're at the mercy of two organizations that develop those browser drivers that operate with their source kind of close to the vest. They don't always they can't share timelines for when they're going to have those done. I do know, having spoken with the folks on those teams, that spec compliance and moving to the spec dialect of the protocol is on their radar. It's something that they prioritize, that it will happen. And once that happens, then we can, for the most part, there will be a point where we can say, okay, all of the major desktop browsers have a spec compliant implementation. We can start to kind of retire the JSON wire protocol. Can I give you a date on that? No, I can't. Again, because not everybody.
Christmas.
I can say we'll probably have it by Christmas. Do you know why developers get Christmas and Halloween mixed up?
Why, Jim?
Because Oct 31 is Dec 25.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
I'll be here all week, y'all. Don't forget to tip your wait staff.
Try the steak; it's delicious. So
Nerd dad
there
jokes.
are a couple of things that we've done to try and make the process of moving to the W3c standard easier for vendors and people working on browser implementations. One of those is actually the format of the responses is basically the same. So if you send a JSON wire protocol response, it looks kind of like the W3c ones, but with some additional sort of decorations on it. The really big difference is the Actions APIs and setting up a new session. And once that's there, it's good. You will see us publicly bumping the version number to 4. Selenium 4 is the one which we will release when we have an implementation of the W3c spec that we are happy with. And in version 5, I have no idea what's going to happen. It's going to be very exciting. What I would kind of expect to happen is, other than the Java bindings, we'll probably see in the 4.x lifecycle some of the language bindings removing the JSON wire protocol and just sticking with the W3c one and relying on the Selenium, the Java implementation to do translation between protocols. Probably. I don't know. I mean, I haven't asked anyone. Is that what you're going to do?
No crystal ball.
We all sit in the same.
Probably not until all of the browsers are like. Yeah, I would like for people to be able to run locally with Ruby without needing to use a Java server, ideally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I might change my mind. We'll see.
It's just a pain in the backside to maintain code. Code is rubbish.
I think we could literally stay here for 3 more hours.
hours.
So I'm afraid we need to start wrapping up, but I definitely want to thank each and every one of you. This is always one of the highlights of the conference and of the year. I'm very, very gratified that we did not get a single question about HTTP status codes from issue 141. I was going to veto and short-circuit that question, but I didn't get a chance to. No kill switch. So thank you, everyone. This has been wonderful. Yes, one more thing?
One last thing. Speaking for myself, and I think everybody up here on stage would probably echo this sentiment. We just want to say thank each and every one of you who have used the project and this little thing that we do, you know, because we use it and it needs to be done. So, you know, thank you all for coming and sharing your experiences with us and coming and sharing the last couple of days with us for this great project that we like and care about.
Excellent. Thank you. How about a hand? All right. So as we come to a close, we want to thank our amazing speakers. Stand up if you're a speaker. Y'all can sit down, whatever.
I can stand up.
Speakers are amazing. Thank you for submitting. Thank you for coming. We want to thank our sponsors. They're amazing. They gave away a lot of great stuff, and it's been fantastic. And yeah.
Sponsors.
We want to thank the team behind the scenes, On Productions, Katra, the photographer, Dan, the filming and live editing, the venue staff, catering, the team at White October, and my favorite people in the world, the white coat captioning folks, the stenographers.
Yes.
All right, and thank you for being an amazing audience once again, traveling far and wide to be here. This has been an amazing couple of days. I think it's been our best yet. And we have one more thing. Tomorrow is the workshops. The one more thing will come after the other thing. So we have workshops tomorrow if you're signed up. I'm told that if you want to go to the Fix a Bug, Become a Committer, show up. We'll just let you buy a ticket there. Don't worry about going online through the platform. All right?
It is a really great workshop. Like, Jim runs it really well.
So I wish I could go.
I've had so many, I've actually gotten some really awesome acquaintances and colleagues from that in the past. And it's one of my favorite things of a conference.
Didn't you sort of become a committer through that workshop, or was that, am I wrong about that?
You're wrong about that.
Okay.
But
Not the first time.
We definitely have had people who have fixed a bug.
Well, we have had people who have become
committers.
committers. Yes, it does happen.
Cool. Now I want to hand it over to Ashley to talk about Speakeasy for a moment.
Thanks. So like I said earlier when we were trying to fill space, we are partnering with Speakeasy for future conferences next year. It's really a great program that is designed to increase diversity and promote new voices in tech conferences through dedicated conference spots. So we've agreed to open up one spot, however many people can apply. You will be paired with a mentor. They will walk you through, like I said earlier, the entire CFP process, what makes a good proposal. Once you have that, And if you do get accepted, they'll walk you through your talk in creating that, let you practice with them. It's an amazing program. I recommend, and the mentors, I know some of them on there are incredible, and they're great voices in the field already, like Alex Schlotterbeck, Marit. There's just so many amazing people that are mentoring and volunteering their time there as well. So I really recommend go to that site if you, I know all of you should have a voice and something incredibly valuable to say. And if you're a first-time speaker, please do look into this program. I can't recommend it more.
Great. Thanks, Ashley. So here we are. Here's the big announcement. We're going to be having a next Selenium conference in Bangalore, India, sometime in summer of 2018. Date to be announced. Hope to see some of you there. And after that, we already know that sometime in the fall, we're going to Chicago.
We still have a lot of details to work out, but we're good.
So I hope to see you there. We'll have some pizza and hot dogs, right?
Yeah.
Selenium's hometown. That's correct. Jason Huggins,
yep.
the true father of Selenium. In 2004, I think he wrote that. The true father.
Don't let Paul Hammond hear you say that.
That's right. That's
or
right.
Brett Petticord.
It's the first person I heard speak about it. So, yeah, we're going to Chicago. We'll be there sometime in the fall. We're still finalizing the venue and the dates, but we will absolutely be there. It'll be an amazing time. And I hope to see everyone out there. All right? So, I guess the other thing, we have an Appium Conference coming up in London, 5th and 6th of April, which should be amazing. And yeah, I don't know if anyone is here to talk about that. Probably not. But anyway, Appium Conf will be fantastic. Hope everyone can go to that too. Everyone will be going to all of these. I require it.
And thanks again. I hope you've enjoyed the whole conference, and it's been a real delight meeting everybody. So
I sort of can't believe it's already over. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been fantastic.